Occupational English test. Listening test. This test has 3 parts. In each part, you'll hear a number of different extracts. At the start of each extract, you'll hear this sound. You'll have time to read the questions before you hear each extract, and you'll hear each extract once only. Complete your answers as you listen. At the end of the test, you'll have 2 minutes to check your answers. Part A. In this part of the test, you'll hear 2 different extracts. In each extract, a health professional is talking to a patient. For questions 1 to 24, complete the notes with information you hear. Now, look at the notes for extract 1. Extract 1, questions 1 to 12. You hear a paediatrician talking to the mother of a 6-year-old boy called Daniel. For questions 1 to 12, complete the notes with a word or short phrase. You now have 30 seconds to look at the notes.
Mrs. Lowings, come in, please. I believe you're here to see me about your son, Daniel.
Yes, he's 6 years old now, but I wanted to talk to you without him being here, at first anyway.
Yes, of course. So tell me what seems to be the problem.
Well, it's his hands. They're in really bad shape. It's mainly the skin, the way it looks. It's so cracked and dry. He's reluctant to complain about it, but I've managed to get him to tell me that it does hurt. Now, from what he says, I believe the pain is pretty much constant.
Right. Is this accompanied by any other symptoms?
Well, yes. Although there's no itching or anything like that, I mean, I've never seen him scratching them. But the most worrying thing is that there's even bleeding sometimes.
Right.
I just don't understand how they've got so bad.
So when did all this begin?
Oh, it's been months now. I thought it would clear up in the spring when the weather got warmer, because I initially put it down to that cold snap we had last winter.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, because that's when we first noticed it. But obviously I was wrong. I've tried to pin down what sets it off, and the thing I keep coming back to is all the hand washing. It makes it worse. And now I've tried to stop him, but it just upsets him if he can't do it, so we've kind of given in.
Have you tried any treatments?
Oh, yes. We started with creams for dry skin, just about every remedy you can buy over the counter. And they all helped a bit, but not much. And once we'd exhausted all those options, we moved on to the home remedies from the internet. I read about things like getting him to wear silk gloves at night. Let me tell you, they weren't very practical.
Yes.
And he was okay with the petroleum jelly treatment, though, so that's one of the things that we still use now. But also his older sister, Sarah, has eczema, so another thing we're doing is using Sarah's aqueous cream.
Yes.
Sarah doesn't mind, but Daniel hates using his sister's stuff. And I don't want it to sound like I'm making things out to be worse than they actually are. It isn't always terrible. Some weeks are better than others. Like, for instance, during the school holidays, there's a definite improvement then.
Can you tell me a bit more background information about Daniel? How is he generally?
Well, in some ways he's fine. I mean, he's doing well at school, but his teachers have alluded to the fact that he's highly strung. That's definitely how I'd sum him up too. Take, for example, his tantrums. Last week, all hell broke loose because he had to go to the childminder on a different day. He spent the whole 3 hours there crying his eyes out. And this is a lady who's looked after him since he was 5 months old, so it's not like he doesn't know who she is.
Right. So he finds it hard to cope with change. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, yes, but it's not just that. When we go on a family day out, I now have to wrap all of his food in plastic cling film or he just won't eat it. He's convinced it'll have germs on it. Honestly, it's just making things impossible.
So, what are your main concerns?
Well, I've done a fair bit of reading up on this, and that's why I wanted to come to see you by myself at first. I've heard about conditions such as Asperger's, but I don't honestly think it's that.
Mm-hmm.
What I am worried about is the possibility that this could be OCD, or at least the start of it. And what I'm worried about is what's the best way to handle it.
Well, you did the right thing coming to see me. What I would suggest...
Extract 2, questions 13 to 24. You hear a consultant gastroenterologist talking to a patient called Vincent Sykes. For questions 13 to 24, complete the notes with a word or short phrase. You now have 30 seconds to look at the notes.
Now, looking at your notes, Mr. Sykes, I see you've been having a few problems recently. Could you tell me a little about what's been happening, your symptoms that you've noticed?
Well, there's several things, really. I've always been on the large side, but my clothes have felt looser recently because I lost a bit of weight. I mean, I haven't been trying or anything. I suppose it's not surprising because I'm not eating as much at the moment. And these days when I am eating, I seem to get full so quickly, before I'm even halfway finished. Actually, getting the food down is hard sometimes too. I just can't... I often feel like I'm choking, to be honest.
Oh, I see. What about your bowel habits? Any change there?
Yeah, sometimes I have to rush to the loo.
Right.
My poos are much lighter colour than it used to be. It's watery too, you know what I mean? My stomach sometimes feels really, gassy is the only way to describe it.
Right, I see. And have you noticed anything else?
Well, you'll have noticed the whites of my eyes. They're looking sort of light yellow, and my skin does a bit too. It's also really itchy these days too. It drives me mad. I'm incredibly tired a lot of the time too. Just feel shattered.
Oh, I see. And have you been experiencing any pain anywhere? In your joints, for example?
Well, my joints feel okay, but there's definitely a pain here, around my stomach.
Right.
And going round there to my back. It usually hurts much more when I'm lying down. It's really hard dropping off to sleep some nights. When I first got it, I'd taken antacid because it felt similar to heartburn, you know? But it didn't seem to help, so I stopped doing that. I should have changed my diet, really, I suppose, but till recently I'd always loved my food, especially the high-fat stuff. I was never one for sugary things, though. I've not got a sweet tooth.
Right. And how's everything affecting your life generally? Let me explain. Your work as a...
Well, I'm retired now, actually.
Oh, right.
Most of my working life, about 30 years of it, was spent in a paint factory. I was a senior colour technician. It was interesting, but a lot was resting on my shoulders, really. And, the responsibility got me down. You know, things got pretty stressful sometimes.
I can imagine. And do you smoke or drink?
Well, I used to smoke. Quite a lot, really, looking back. About 20 a day.
Right.
But I gave up when I stopped work a couple of years ago. But I still like a drink. Not a lot, but I do enjoy a few beers at the weekend, you know.
Well, it's good that you've stopped smoking. Were you having health problems when you decided to give up?
Well, everything seemed to start going wrong a couple of years ago when I got a hepatitis B infection.
Oh.
And I decided the cigarettes weren't helping that. And then not long after, about a year ago, they told me I got gallstones. That was pretty awful.
Oh, yes, it must have been. And how have you been since then? Well,
not brilliant, really. I got a blood clot about 6 months ago. in my calf. And they put me on warfarin, for that.
Yes.
And then last month, on top of everything, they told me I developed diabetes too. That was a bit of a surprise, to tell you the truth. I really hadn't seen that one coming.
No. Well, I can see that you've been through the mill this last year or so, one way or another. OK, what I'd like to do now is to get a couple of tests ordered. We'll start with a scan.
That is the end of Part A.